Hello everyone, this is Preeti. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Well, this video is the continuity of Python playlist. Till now, we have discussed about basics in Python such as variables and then operators, then conditional statements in Python. In this video, we are going to talk about loops. Before starting, I would like to give you a brief introduction about what basically loop is. Well, let's say if I want to print any statement multiple times, how I can do that? The first way is to use print inbuilt function. So let's say if I want to print Python, so it will print Python single time. And let's say if I want to print it for 2 times, or even if I want it for 5 times, I can do that using print inbuilt function. But let's say if I want to print it for 1,000 times or 2,000 or million times, then definitely this is not the convenient and efficient way. So in that case, we can use loops. So loops are basically used to perform iteration, or in simple words, I could say that these are used to repeat a block of code. In Python, we are going to use for loop and while loop. Well, both are loops, but the working is different for both the types. For loop is basically used to perform repetition over elements of sequence. So what actually sequences we have already discussed about sequence, a list, or it may be a range or string, anything. Okay, any sequence it may be. And for while loop, you can perform iteration until a certain condition is met. So there is a particular condition in case of a while loop, which is not there in case of for loop. Now let's say I want to get the output for this list. Here I'm using a list as a sequence. So here I'm using different data types such as float, integer, then again float, and a string data type. So here I got the output. But what if I want the variables one by one? So I can do that by using for loop. Well, this is the syntax for using for loop. It's very simple. You have to use this for keyword. Then I is actually a variable. You can use any variable name, whatever you want to use in a sequence. So here you have to mention a sequence. Here I'm mentioning this x. X is basically a list. You can directly mention a list here, or maybe a range, or maybe a tuple, or anything you want, any sequence, Then after colon, you have to take care of the indentation, as indentation is really very important in Python. Now what it will do basically, it will fetch all the values in a sequence one by one. This I will basically fetch all the values in the sequence that has been provided here. So here is a list. It will fetch all the values one by one. So you will get all the values in the output one by one. Now let's talk about a range function. Well, I have already provided a brief introduction about a range function in my last videos. You can get the detail from that videos. I will provide the link in the description below. But here let me just give you a brief introduction about what basically range function gives. It gives a list of values. Let's say if I want to get the range for 5, it will provide me a list starting from 0 and ending with the number 1 less than the number you want. Let's say if you want it from 1 to 5, if you want doesn't want 0, then it will provide you a list ranging from 1 to 4. If you want to include 5, you can do that as well, like this. And let's say if you want values that should have difference of 2, you can do that as well. And the range function is important. You will see why. Now here for loop creates an element I, and each time I takes a value from this range 0 to 5, that means 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it will print that value one by one. So basically this element created by for loop, it will fetch the values from this range and it will keep on printing all those values one by one. Now you can also use conditional statements with for loop. So how we can do that? I can use if inside a for loop. So I'm providing here a range starting from 1 to 20 with a difference of 2. So this list will start from 1 ending at 19, each number having a difference of 2. So it will basically print 1, 3, 5 like this. So I will fetch all the values from this list one by one, and I'm providing a condition here. If the number is, if this element I, if I is divisible by 2 equals to 0, means if it is divisible by 2, then only it will print I. So basically it will not print any number here, as all the numbers will be odd values like 1, 3, 5, like this. Fine. But if you mention here not equals to instead of equals to, then it will print all the values. You can see here. You can also use for inside for, that is nested for, like nested if. We have done with nested if. Similarly, we can use nested for. The syntax is very simple here. So in this way, you can use nested for loops as well. Now let's have a look at something else, something a bit more complicated, I would say. So let's see what we are doing here. Here I am declaring a variable x being 0, and then I am creating a blank list here called a variable name y. And so what's going to happen now is that we have our same array name of items here. Fine. So this is an array. Fine. So it is going to be have our same array name of items here. Now every time when we run this loop, fine. So every time when we run this loop, we want to increment this loop, this value of, sorry, x by 1. So whenever we run this loop, so it should be increment the value, it should increment the value of x with 1. So here this plus equal sign means that every time this runs x incremented by 1, and let me just show this how it will increment a value. So let me just give a value x is equals to 1. So x is equals to x plus 1. So this is what basically it will does. This is basically incremented the value of x by 1. So our output becomes 2. So this is the same way. Let's say now we know that our value of x is 2. And now let's say if I want to increment the value again with 1, so it will give me 3. I hope that this must be clear to you what this is doing. Now after printing the value of x, x means it is incrementing it every time. So initially it will be 0, then 1, 2, 3, fine. And it is printing this I. I is basically fetching the values from this items from this A, B, C. So it will print it like 0, 1, 2, 3, fine. So A, B, C, D. Then it is appending these values, and it is appending this value in this list, this blank list I have created here. So at the end it will print all the values here. So let me just run this. You can see this. Fine. So it is incrementing all the values one by one, and here it is printing these items. I basically, I is fetching, I is an element that has been created by 4, and it is fetching the values from this item. So it is printing here, and it is appending all those values inside this list, and at the last it will provide you the value of x. So next we will see while loops. While loops basically have you have to provide a condition in case of while loops. Fine, there are three things you have to take care. First of all, you have to initialize a variable, then you have to provide a condition. If this particular condition is met, means the it should repeat a code until a certain condition is met, and then you can provide increment or decrement operator. So basically here I am initializing my variable x is equals to 0. You can even provide 1, 2, whatever value you want, with whatever value you want to increment your variable. Then you have to provide a condition. Here I am providing a condition until my variable is less than 5. So it will keep on incrementing value one by one. When it will reach 5, it will stop printing it. So here it has reached 5. After that it will not print any variable because its condition has been met. Now let's see what we are doing here. Here I am using while true. Okay, first of all I have initialized the value of x is equals to 0, similar to this one. But here I am using while true. What does while true does? While true will run the loop forever until a certain condition happens until a certain, like here we are using this break statement. Break basically is another inbuilt Python function which is used to stop the iteration. Whether we are using for loop or using while loop, we can use a break statement, break condition here to stop this iteration. Fine. So code will stop running, okay, whenever this condition is met. So this is the condition here: when x is equals to 5, this loop will stop iterating, and the increment here is we will increment the value of x is equals to 1 every time this loop runs. So every time this loop runs, it will increment the value of x is equals to 1 until 5. When it will reach 5, after the value of 5, when it will above 5, it will not run. So it will stop here when the value of x is equals to 5. So this is another way of using break statement with true while true. So but this is definitely the more convenient one as comparison to this one. You can use anyway. Well, I hope that you have learned something new from this video. If you have learned something new, please like the video, and as usual, I will provide the link of this notebook in the description below. Please subscribe the channel if you have not subscribed it yet. Stay tuned. Thank you so much. Bye bye.